with us. How's everything going?
Everything is going well. I'm super excited about our conversation today.
Me too. Me too. I am so grateful that I had the chance to meet you at Occupy 2024 for the first time. And you're one of those people that I met, but I feel like I've known you forever.
Yeah, same.
I feel like we grew up together.
Right.
It's such a cool thing how God orchestrates things and creates relationships that where there's that, really good synergy. I feel like that's really what I'm seeing more and more, especially where he's doing things with women, that the relationships are coming together so beautifully. So tell us about you.
Sure. I guess I can start with what I do. So I am a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Louisiana and Texas. I am licensed to practice in both places. I am also a life transitions strategist. Is what we've named it, where I really get to help and coach women through life transitions. I do
Mhm.
that also in the therapy practice, really focusing in on life transitions and trauma history. And I came into that work because I have experienced so many life transitions, as we all do.
Mhm.
I tell people I believe the foundation for me moving into this work was really how I grew up. I grew up
Gotcha.
as a military kid with a lot of
A lot of
transition,
transition.
moving
Yeah.
around and adjusting and all of those different things. And so that was I think God used that to help me learn to navigate those transitions well. And I like to think, especially at this stage in my life, that I do it with some grace. And so
Mhm.
that's what I love to help women do. Besides that, and probably first and foremost, is definitely that I am a wife and a mom. I've a husband of 24 years now. We
Come
just made
on.
years in May. I have two daughters. They're 20 and 18 years old. So we will have two college students come this fall.
Ooh,
So this is a life transitional
life
season for
transition
me as
season.
well. Yeah, and I love the Lord. That's it.
Man, I love that. So why the focus on why specifically focusing on like the for your coaching and your counseling were you seeing more people that had that kind of struggle with making those transitions like for that to be you don't hear that often that that's something that people focus on.
Right. So, yeah, absolutely. In those conversations having with clients, and we start really digging deep as to what's going on, there's usually a big life transition that's happening, or
Hmm.
it's happened and they haven't recovered from it. So having conversations with women, whether it be that I'm in this new marriage or relationship, or I've recently gotten divorced, or I had a baby and I've lost myself, or like me currently, my kids are, growing up and moving into doing their own thing. I don't know what to do with it. Employment changes, like all of the things,
Hmm.
the career changes, and really having more conversations about that with women and diving deep into that, some of the struggle with the life transitions or the way that we're viewing them, when
Yeah.
especially in the therapy space where we get to deal with the history. I can see where, okay, the way you grew up or these life experiences that you had in your past are showing up in the way that you're able or unable to manage this current life transition that you're going through.
I don't think I've ever heard it worded that way, that they haven't recovered from the transition.
Mhm, mhm.
That's a really powerful way to describe it because I don't think we've I like having experience, of course. I think all of it there. I don't think there's a person that exists on the planet who can say, I've never been through a life transition. Like if you're getting older, if you're growing and developing, and even if it's not even a major transition of things like career wise, um, sometimes just the transition of going from being single to being married, right?
Correct.
I don't think we realize that we do have to recover from the what was to move
Mhm.
into the what currently is.
Correct.
Do you find that transitioning methods or the way transition is handled, do you find that it's different for women compared to men?
It absolutely is. And I find that in my, because majority of my conversations are with women, right?
Mhm.
And I, I have, male clients as well, but the majority are women. And in those conversations with women, in even personal life experience, right? I see where we manage things for us, they're a lot more emotionally connected, right? It's
Okay.
like everything in our lives are connected. We don't tend to be able to separate often or separate well.
Mm.
And not that we should, because I believe that it's our godly makeup that, when I'm home with my family, right? I'm present with them, but also if my mother calls and she's ill or something's going on in her
Yeah.
life, then I'm going to jump into that caretaker role. If I'm at work and my kid texts me and says, "Mom, I'm sick," like, hey, I gotta go.
Mhm.
Husbands sometimes or men sometimes are not always connected in the same way. They have this ability to really stay very focused on where they are in the moment. So if they're at work, they're very much at work.
I
For us,
think,
we can be at work, but we're thinking about, okay, I have dinner to do. So and so has this practice. I need to make sure that I make that doctor's appointment,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because we are just, it's all intertwined for us. I picture it as wires. So, if you look behind some of our televisions, and we have the television, we have, maybe the Apple TV, and we may have the sound, and it's like just wires every.
wires. Yeah,
That's women.
yeah,
Men are more like they've taken those wires and they've tied them together, some twisty ties, and they're neat and placed, really neatly. And we just don't typically do that. Some of us do, right? Some of us have a personality that bends to that, but not most of us that I've encountered.
I think too, like I've been seeing these conversations lately about like the invisible work that women do. And so when you mentioned being at work, but also thinking the kids need to be picked up at such and such time, this one's got soccer, this one's got tennis, what are we eating tonight? Hubby's got a doctor's appointment tomorrow.
Mhm.
All of that's invisible work. Having to
Yes.
remember everyone's schedule, having to remember what medications everybody needs to take. I've got to go pick this up from the pharmacy. I've got, this one's got to go here, that one's got to go. Our minds are very rarely, I would say,
Mhm.
ever just in the moment.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
And that's what makes transition tough for us.
That's what makes transition tough. And then when we look at the biological side, right? So when you look
Mhm.
at for women, like we go through puberty and we talk about that, but how often it's being spoken about a lot more now, where we're talking more about perimenopause and how early that actually starts in our lives.
Finally.
That is we are literally changing at the cellular level. Like everything about us is changing,
Yeah.
right? And I'm having to adjust to that. And sometimes it looks like, okay, she is tripping.
She's
Like,
tripping.
what is the problem?
Why are you so overheated? Like, why are you fanning all the time?
Why are you sweating? It's
What you
freezing in
sweating
here.
for? Like,
You
we're
know, so
outside. It's
we're out.
winter time. We had that. My husband took a picture of me when it snowed here.
Mhm,
He took a
mhm.
picture. I was outside with no shoes on in the snow. And he's like, "How are you doing that?" It's hot to me. It's extremely warm. I know you see snow. I know it's like 3 degrees outside. But this
Right,
is making me very happy standing
right.
out here in the snow with no shoes
No
on.
shoes on.
This
Correct.
is
Correct.
exhilarating.
Yes.
That makes so much sense. We're experiencing transitions biologically, physiologically
Mhm.
we're experiencing transitions that invisible transitions. Like
Correct.
growth is a visible transition, right? When you're a child, you're getting taller, you're getting bigger. The menopause, perimenopause conversation, that's an invisible
Yeah.
transition that's tough to communicate,
Correct.
especially if you're a female with a male doctor. You're communicating to
Right.
someone who has no basis of real understanding. Like
Right.
you've got theory because you went to med school, but
Right.
you've got no real context for what I'm experiencing and trying to communicate that to you, and you're never going to ever feel what I'm feeling.
Never gonna ever feel it. You're never gonna
You're
experience it.
never going to experience
Have
it.
knowledge without experience.
Yeah. Oh,
You know what I mean? It's yeah, you have
that's
knowledge.
a
You
knowledge
knowledge.
with no experience.
It's like our kids. They have a lot of knowledge without experience yet, you know?
I love that. So is it the same for how do you find that? Because I think like right now, just it's the end of June 2025. So we know what's happening in the world. We know what's happening politically, societally, and things like that, and how much of that has impacted many people on very personal levels, like um, decisions that are being made by people who don't really understand how it trickles down to the rest of us. So having situations where we're going to shut down this federal building, go figure it out.
Mhm.
You know, how are we how are we handling transitions with things that are beyond our control? Like, does it work differently for things that we have power over versus what
Mhm.
essentially seems to just happen to us,
Right. I
where
like what
there's
you
no prep time? You've got, yesterday you had a job, today you don't.
right. Right. Yeah. I think, Cheryl, it is one, we have to own the fact that when those transitions happen to us unexpectedly,
Hmm.
it's jolting, right? It is we can become very dysregulated because I wasn't expecting to walk into work today and be told that this huge change is happening. I no longer have a job, or I have to immediately no longer work from home and go back to work, or whatever the
Hmm.
scenario is. This is shutting down, and there's nothing that I can do about it. So I think initially, the first thing that we need to do is own the fact that this is unexpected. It's traumatizing for many of us. And then we can begin to look at, okay, what do I need to do? Right. So looking at all of this, and trying to encompass it into a work that we can make it make sense, and thinking about a framework. You and I talked about that a little bit
Hmm.
the last time that we spoke. And so I've come up with this thing called the COMPASS framework.
Nice.
Okay. And so compass it's really simple. It's to clarify, get really clear about what your current reality is.
Hmm.
And then once you're clear about what the reality is, what do you want the desired outcome to be?
Okay.
Right. So where I am
Clarify,
right now.
clarify first, and
Mhm,
then what's the outcome?
yes. Yes.
Okay.
So you have you want to, and I think about this in therapy, right? If you've ever been to therapy, your therapist is often going to talk to you about what are your goals for therapy.
Hmm.
Like, where do you want to be when we wrapped up our time together, right? And so we're getting clear on that. And I'm looking at where I am today, where I want to be tomorrow, right? We do the same thing in coaching, where I am today, and we're projecting
Yes.
forward to where I want to be, right?
Hmm. Right.
And then so we look at the encompass, you look at the so now we have to get organized.
Ooh.
Now we need to get organized and organize our resources. organize our support system. So initially, when we think about resources, we will usually go to what?
Money.
We'll go to money, right?
Money.
We'll go
Yeah.
to what's in the account, what's in the
Mhm.
401k, what's in, all of these different places that we keep our finances. And that's really important, especially in that type of transition, whether it be loss of a job, loss of a loved one, a spouse or what have you. We do need to look at that.
Yeah.
But the other resources that we need to look at is our support system. Who do you have around you that can hold space for you, that you can call on the phone, meet for coffee, and have a conversation with about what's happening right now? What resources do you have, right? I'm going to always promote therapy. Get, if you don't have a therapist,
That's
get a
good.
therapist, but also your community, your friends, right? Your church group, those people who can show support without judgment, who can hold space for you in your life, right? Who can, hey, can you watch my kid while I go on this job interview?
Hmm.
That type of thing. So we want to organize those resources, the financial resources, as well as those personal resources for support.
That's good. That's really good. I like how you worded the support part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what I hear you saying, like it immediately went to picturing what you do when you start a business. Like you need the financial, but you need the human resources as
Yeah.
well to help you start navigating whatever you're in to build you so that you can move better, even if it's not faster. You're
Yes.
able to move more smoothly into what's next for you. You
Yeah.
need the financial and the human resources.
And the and I love that you said even if it's not faster, because sometimes, especially in an urgent, unexpected situation,
Yeah.
like we go into, where the triage mode, right? And
Hmm.
we want to stop the bleeding right away,
Yeah.
and we want to find a solution right away. Well, sometimes when we do that, we're operating out of anxiety and we can make a lot of missteps, right? And so I love that you said not even if you're moving, even if you're not moving fast, you want to move with wisdom, right? Which is why
Yeah,
we want to get clear, and which is why we want to get organized.
that's good.
Yeah.
What's the M for?
So the M is manage, right? And so this is where we want to manage our emotions and we want to manage our health, right? And so we talked about therapy. Like we want to have some tools in our tool belt to help in those moments where I am feeling anxious. Because I'm not going to say that you shouldn't feel anxious or you're not going to feel, you're probably highly likely going to feel anxious. Well, how do you regulate your emotions? You're
Mm,
feeling frustrated, you're feeling angry. How are you regulating that with your family, with your kids? Are we fussing a lot? Are we overcorrecting, right? Are we arguing with our spouse because of the internal feelings that we're having, right? We need to learn to manage those emotions, get some support with managing those emotions and managing our mental health overall.
that's good. That's
Yeah. And I will even throw in physical health, right? Getting out and taking those walks, if you can't pay the gym membership anymore, that's fine.
mm-hmm,
Do what you can do at home.
mm-hmm. Eat,
Eat
sleep.
healthy.
Yes. Yes.
Because
Yes.
I know when I'm not doing well, sometimes I will
Whatever you grab.
whatever I grab,
If it's sweet, if it's salty, if it's
whatever.
coated in chocolate, if
Yes, mine is, listen, that popcorn, I pop it on the stove. You know
oh,
what I mean? Melt that butter.
come
Sometimes
on.
I'll use a little coconut oil, but you
What
all the
time are
time
you doing that today? Look,
I did that yesterday,
give
Cheryl.
me a minute. I'll be over. It'll take me a little time to get to Lake Charles, but I'm on my way. I love that. I love that. Managing the emotions as well as your mental and physical health,
Yeah,
not letting you fall apart just because everything around you is falling apart.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
That's good.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's the next step?
So P is plan. Strategic actions and decisions. You want to be strategic in your movement. And so for me, when I think of strategic actions and decisions, a lot of those things I can sit and work through those things on my own,
Hmm.
but I have found the value in having a coach in my corner
Yeah.
because some they will see the things that I can't see because I'm so close to it. Right. And so sometimes having that person, it may be someone in your support system, or it may be an actual coach or counselor who can sit with you and hear what your plans are and
Hmm.
ask the right questions,
I
right,
like that.
to help you see the things that you can't see.
I like that. And I would also recommend, like, if you know someone who is a coach that's in your existing circle, make sure you are creating a line of distinction between the coaching relationship and the personal relationship. Don't talk about stuff off the clock.
Right.
Don't do that because it'll blur the lines
Mhm.
so much. And then in many instances you'll feel like I've done that before. I'm so that's why I'm saying the as a coach, you start feeling like you're always working. Like there
Right.
is no room for the friendship because the friend needs you to be a coach all the time. So just as a quick point of advice, if you have someone in your inner circle who is a coach, make sure that you've got distinguishing factors in the conversations that you're having in not like making sure that in the ways that you're venting, that you're not venting as a friend expecting answers from a coach.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. And I think that is so and for the coach, like being in the seat of the coach or the therapist, one, when I'm in that when I'm not working, like don't expect me to show up as the therapist. Don't
Hmm.
expect me to show up as the coach. Like I'm going to be Tanya. I am because I literally want to take all of that off and leave that where it is so that I have room to
Yeah,
myself, right, in my friendships, like we have conversations about the things, the hard things that are happening in our lives, and we may advise one another, but I'm not going to do that from a therapist perspective. I'm going to do that from your friend, you
right.
know. I'm going to do that, as your sister, not as the professional,
Hmm.
right? And so I think that it's very important, and I love that you brought that up, that we have to make sure to have those distinct lines. And as a therapist and offering coaching services, like even that line is very, very distinct. I have a separate document that clears what differentiates what the two differences are. And if
That's
those
good.
lines ever are crossed, then I'm going to end the relationship because we can't do both.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. I actually had a situation with a friend that I was coaching. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we came into the coaching session and, well, you told me the other day, nope, you weren't talking to coach. You were talking to
Mm-hmm.
your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Don't even bring that up.
Right. Right. Right.
Don't bring that up because now I've got a different set of information even now
Mm-hmm.
in the coaching conversation than what you gave me when we were just having the friend conversation.
Yep. Yep.
So
Which
this
is
is
why,
because this is new information, I'm going to give you a completely different answer than what you got then, but also you weren't talking to me as a coach, you were talking to me as a friend. So none
correct.
of that applies in this moment and the work that I'm telling you you now need to do so you can move forward.
Yeah, for sure. Which is why, we as clinicians, we can never counsel friends and family or people close to us, right? And I've had friends, ask, and I'm like, no, I can't do that because one, my heart is attached to you and your whole family. So, we can't do that. And, of course they understand and are respectful, and I just refer them to someone else, but I think that's why that is the case, because we those lines can get so easily blurred together.
Mm,
So
that's good.
yeah,
So we
we
plan
plan.
out the strategy,
Mhm.
plan out what decisions we need to make, get a
Mhm.
coach.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Then we move to A.
We move to A, and A is adapt and adjust throughout the
Both.
process. both
Both.
adapt and adjust throughout the process. So I have to realize in this journey, there's a different version of me that's going to have to show up. And sometimes we can be resistant to that. So, we mentioned earlier on talking about when people haven't recovered from the transition, usually that's because they haven't done a great job at adapting and adjusting.
Mm.
Because I'm trying to hold on to the version of me that was single and not a mother when she can't be in the space of being a wife and a mother.
Mhm.
You have to show up as a different version of yourself, right? I can't continue to do the things that I did in that season of life in the same way as and in this season of life, right? I have to now make some adjustments and make some adaptions.
That's really good. Doing not just one or the other, but both
But
throughout the process. I think
throughout,
is the most important part of what you said is the adaptation and the adjustment doesn't stop just because you get stuck along the way.
correct, correct. Yep. I would think about marriage, Cheryl. Like you're married, I'm married. We are not new to this. Throughout your marriage, you've had to adapt to this person, you've had to adjust. They've had to adapt to you, they've had to adjust to you. And then get this, we also have to adapt and adjust to the different versions of ourselves as we're going through these life transitions, right? And I mean, for women, it's just like, okay, I'm one version of me when it's just the two of us. Then there's another version of me when the kid is around,
Yeah.
then you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then there's another version of me, one day when I become grandparents, like I see the way that my kids' grandparents show up, and I'm like, you are not the same person. We have to adapt throughout that time, throughout that whole process. And when we don't do the adaptations and when we don't adjust, what happens?
It becomes a very confusing thing. So like I think that's a perfect example because my husband and I have known each other since 11th grade.
Oh, wow.
And so that high school version of us moving into young adult version of us and then having been away from each other for some time throughout just life happening and
Right.
losing touch with each other and stuff like that. And he managed to find me while I was still on Facebook.
Okay.
And that version of me was a very different version than the last person that he knew, and same for him with me. Then when getting married, and then it's all the things, right? It's the marriage, it's the merging of your identities where the two become one. But what does that even actually mean? And
Right.
how do we do that? And adapting to days when I'm not my best self because yeah, we're in the same space. We've become one, but we do still have like these individual lives and individual thoughts. And when I'm not my best self, now you've got to adapt to a version of me that you've never seen.
That part.
When something really crushing happens and you're not even sure, I just want to help. I don't want help right now. Like, like so dealing with those things. And then of course, aging
Mm-hmm.
is another set of circumstances altogether. If you're ever in a situation where there may be like a major health challenge that you experience, like when the vows say for better or worse,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what that looks like and who you are as a person until that happens.
So true. That's so true.
You do not know. You
No.
don't know from that person. You don't know for you as an individual. And
Mhm.
so I often tell people like when you get married, if 10 years down the line, you guys are still the same person, nobody grew.
Yeah, that's
Nobody, look, like I would check that. I really would.
correct.
I would be a little bit concerned if you've not had to, if you just always understood each other.
Right.
I mean, unless Jesus just really gave y'all the game plan? And if so, share it with the rest of us
The
because
rest of us, please.
because how'd you do that? But
Yes.
you become these different versions of yourself, and then you've got to learn this person all over again.
Hmm.
I've had I've had situations with friends and acquaintances where I've told them like you really really don't know a person until you see them with like a lot of money and they're doing really well or with like no money and they're doing really bad.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
That's gonna be a whole different
Yep.
kind of thing for you to have to navigate in your relationship. And so navigating hard seasons, like you said, when the child comes,
Hmm.
when the child is growing up, like I know for you guys, like you said, you're getting ready to have two college students.
Correct.
So y'all are moving into empty nesting.
Hmm.
Now we got to figure out who are we now that we're not having two kids in the house anymore.
We're not having to be at all of the things, right? We're no longer having to do all of the theater and the dance and all of these different things. We have a lot more time on our hands now.
Right. Right. I feel like the pandemic did that too.
Yes, absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
have not had to be around this person all day, every day.
Right.
And now you do. Y'all still like each other? You know,
Correct. Yes, yes. I
I
love
love that.
what you said about the different seasons, right? I think that it's I often say that you should know before you commit to an individual, you should see them in every season, and I don't mean summer, winter, spring, and fall.
Yes.
I mean with like you said, with plenty, with lack, when
Mhm.
they're angry, when they're sad, like all of the things. See them in all of those seasons before you make a commitment to this.
That and see that'll get us into a whole other conversation because that requires intentionality.
It does.
That requires intentionality. Whether it's a marital relationship or even a friendship,
Hmm.
right? Because we often have, especially these days, I feel like we have really unreasonable expectations where friendship is concerned. And if you have not gotten to know, so personally, as an introvert,
Hmm.
I don't have a lot of bandwidth for a lot of friendships, but I have bandwidth for high quality friendships. And
Hmm.
so, because of that, you're going to get a really, really, really good version of me, but also understanding that that good version of me might mean I'm not talking to you every day. I'm not that friend. If you need that, don't talk to me because I'm not the emergency contact call at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm just not.
Right. Yeah.
But when I'm there, I'm there, and I'm there in a very, very strong, very powerful way. But you've also got to be able to adjust and adapt to having a friend who feels the way that I feel and governs my life in the way that I do. Because I just don't have the bandwidth for the person who needs the talk on the phone every day, tell me everything about everything. I don't necessarily need to know all that, but that requires intentionality of you understanding me and me understanding you. I feel like in the pursuit of marriage, even, it requires you having hard conversations early and not just dating for fun.
Yes. Yes. Asking a lot of questions. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah, the intentionality is necessary.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the A. So we've got clarify, organize,
Mhm.
manage, plan, adapt. The first S is
Stabilize. So our S's go together here, just like adapt and adjust.
mhm,
Stabilize and strengthen. Stabilize and strengthen for future transitions. This is
that's good.
where
So
we
you're not, if you're stabilizing and strengthening for future transitions, you're not getting stuck every time a transition happens.
correct because I'm here now. And this is not, this doesn't feel good. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
therefore, I want to prepare for when and if there's another transition, that especially those that are outside of my control, right? Because some transitions we choose, but a lot of what we see now happening right now is outside of our control.
Mm.
And so what can I do to prepare and strengthen for those areas? And that's where I go back and I look at those resources. Like I'm looking at the finances, right? I wasn't, if I wasn't prepared financially right now, what do I need to get done during this season to be prepared for the next time?
Mhm.
Right? If I don't have the support system in place, then what do I need to do to open my life up to the right supports?
That's good.
So I want to strengthen for those future transitions that inevitably are going to come. They're going to happen. But sometimes we're just not prepared. Maybe we have not been as intentional. Maybe life took us down some paths that we were not expecting. Maybe we had some hardships and some things that have been hard to recover from. And so now we're here, but um I have to be, like you said, intentional, but very purposeful as I'm moving forward. And I think that's a part of the wisdom that we gain as we're going through life. As life is lifing, it's really important for us to learn.
Oh, that's
You
very
know what
good.
I mean?
That's
It's
very
really
good.
important to gain that wisdom from
Yeah.
this experience that was uncomfortable and unfortunate and unplanned. And even the planned things will bring uncomfortability. They're going to bring things that are unplanned, right? Unexpected. They're going to happen. Yeah.
That's okay. So see, that's another, because this shows you how layered
Mm-hmm.
transitions can be, right? So taking your situation, for example,
Mm-hmm.
you've planned for the fact that your girls are going to graduate high school,
Correct.
but you can't plan for number one, their own decision on what schools they want to go to.
That part.
And number two, how they feel about the transition from high school to basically adult life
Correct.
as a college student. You
Mm-hmm.
can't micromanage how they feel in an effort to help you get through the transition. And you likewise can't make the decision for them. You are going to go to a school that's here in Louisiana. You're going to study what we want you to study. We're going to see you every weekend for Sunday dip. You can't do that.
Can't do that. You can't. Not if you want a healthy relationship with your kids.
Not if you don't want them starting a podcast
Correct.
about
All
you.
about you.
You're the problem. You're the problem. That is there. So there's layers, there's nuances, and you've got to do the work of paying attention to the wisdom that comes through navigating the season of transition.
Yeah.
That is, I love the framework.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Yay, you. You know I love a good framework.
Yes, yes.
I
Listen,
love
you
some
deposited
steps to
that
go
seed.
through.
I was like, hold on, Cheryl asked me a question. Wait a minute. Let me get on my business.
Let me put a framework together. I absolutely, but I love the, especially that last step, stabilize and strengthen for the future, because you're not going to, this won't be the only transition you go through. This won't be the last transition you go through. And like we just said, you can't manage how other people who are connected to you may also be experiencing transition.
Correct.
I had a friend some time ago who had a loved one who passed, and the challenge was, well, they're acting like blah blah blah, such and such and such and such. And I was like, yeah, but your relationship to this person was one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Their relationship to the person was completely different. And you can't micromanage how they're processing
Correct.
the grief
Correct.
how they're working through their own transition. Yeah, you feel a certain way because of how you were connected to this individual, but
Right.
this was
They
her
kind of
mom. Like this was her mom. So
hello.
you can't be upset. It and even if you feel they're not handling it the right way,
Mm-hmm.
you can't be because you still have your mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Her mom is gone now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way she's experiencing this situation is going to be wildly different from how you're experiencing it because you weren't connected to her the way that she was.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. I was often tell people, especially with grief, we have to be very mindful that we can't determine how a person grieves, how they
Mhm.
should grieve, how they shouldn't grieve, how long they should grieve, right?
Mhm.
You should be past that by now. Like you need to get grief is, for me, it's a representation of the love that you have for a person and your experience of them. So even if the relationship wasn't great, but that was your father or your mother, you have lost your father or your mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a big deal, right? It's one thing for me to be upset with the parent and you're still here. I know I could call you and we can fix it.
Mhm.
But when you're not here, that's a different experience, right? The how I handle the loss of someone is going to maybe vastly different, and I don't get to no one gets to determine for me how I handle it or how long I go through the grieving process, because grief comes in ebbs and flows. I can be fine today
Yeah.
and in the morning just unable to control the tears, right? So I love that example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we have the framework, one of the I want to follow up with one final question for you.
Okay.
Is how does because like part of the work that we do through Occupy Academy is helping women understand identity,
Yes.
um and not just like surface level.
Hmm.
I'm not going to get into it, but how does transition impact
Hmm.
identity? How does it affect, because I know that it does, like when you go from, say for example, from being an active parent in your child's life, you're taking them to all the things, you're showing up for all the plays, the dance recitals, all the things, and now they're an adult,
Yeah.
and so they don't need you to parent them.
Hmm.
You're still the parent, but they don't need parenting as an adult. What are some of the ways that that identity is challenged when we're going through transitions?
That's such a good question. So, thinking about identity, um, and taking mothering as an example, I love that. I love that example because it goes through different phases. That
Mhm.
relationship, that transition, right? Um, it will challenge a person that has placed all of their identity in mothering, right? So if I see myself only as a mom or a stay-at-home mom and wife, or if basically I put on that cape, I put on that hat and that role, and that's all I have seen myself as, right? Imagine you're driving in your car and the car all of a sudden disappears and you're on the interstate, like, you know what I mean? Like,
That's it seems extreme. It seems like an extreme example, but that is very much what, oh my gosh. I'm so glad Braxton's only 13. Well, he's not even 13 yet. He's about to be 13 in August. But
okay.
that's a really good way to word it.
And it is will leave a person, and I've seen it in the work that I get to do. Literally, I don't know who I am. What am I supposed to do
Yeah.
now? They don't need me anymore. They're not calling, they're not coming by. all of these things because the world has been consumed around these kids.
Hmm.
Or you take a married couple who has not stayed up to date, like we up to date our phones on who this person is and I'm married to, right along the way, along the journey. And it's going to challenge that. Do I still love this person? Do I still want to be here? Do I even like him or her anymore? All of these different things. That identity is very much can challenge those life transitions. And which is why it's so important that our identity is not built in the roles that we play.
Yes. You are not what you do.
You are not what you do. Your identity is not centered around you being the CEO of this company. Your identity is not centered around you being, the principal of the school. What happens when all of
And
that
that goes away when it
that
goes
goes away?
away. Yeah.
So our identity really has to be, for me, centered in Christ,
Yeah.
right? That rather I'm being the therapist, I'm being the coach, I am ministering a word. Like, I don't do titles well. So because of that, it's just like, because when you've experienced and you've gotten wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Though I'm not holding tightly to these things, to this identity, right? I know that my job is to nurture, to care for, to teach, to train, and to prepare my children to be launched into the world as their own individual selves. It is not to keep them tied to me.
That's so good. That's so, so good. Without having that understanding
Mm-hmm.
of the truth that you are not what you do. Because what happens when you don't do that
Right.
anymore?
Right.
I have seen people go into a whole identity crisis
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because they fired me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And not even fired, the company shut down altogether. It doesn't even exist as an entity. You can't even get another job there,
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Or in instances where like you say about moving from high school to adulthood as far as children are concerned, your whole life. I have seen really bad examples. And I'm gonna call it that. I was about
Mm-hmm.
to say I hate to say it, but it is a really bad example of wives whose
Mm-hmm.
entire life was the child.
Yep.
The child has grown up and gone off,
Mm-hmm.
like they're not even in the state anymore. And now it's you and this man in the house, and they're asking these questions. Why are we here?
Yep.
Do
Yep.
we actually like each other? Why do we do this?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the child is in college and
Mm-hmm.
the marriage dissolves. Like I've seen situations
Mm-hmm.
like that before where the woman was so consumed with everything that's related to the child, that's connected to the child, not really realizing that you still have to live after the child moves out.
Right. That we can't neglect our marriages and our spouses for our children.
Right.
Right. They honestly, and I am a firm believer in that marriage is the foundation of the family. Like, and so when that's not well, it definitely, when that child goes off and that marriage dissolves, as you just described, that's a traumatic experience for that child. I know they're an adult. I
Hmm.
see adult 20, 30 something year old people whose parents get divorced and they fall apart.
The parents are 60 and 70 years old, talking about we don't want to be together anymore. It's like, well, where y'all gonna go? First of all.
Correct. Correct. Listen, my husband said, if you leave, I'm coming with you.
My husband says the same thing. Where we going? We
We
getting
go,
divorced. Where we going? He has this other thing that he does now that like talking about invisible work with that. And I consider it a compliment. I didn't at first because it's like, figure it out. Figure it out. And he has this thing that he says, he's like, if you don't know, we don't know. So,
huh? Mm,
so I'm like, okay, I have to consider that a compliment, that you trust my judgment and my knowledge and my ability to assess a situation well enough to know whether or not this should be the direction you go. That's his thing. If you don't know, we don't know, and I'm not doing it.
I
Yes,
love
sir. I totally understand that.
yes.
I appreciate you, Tanya, so, so, so much.
Oh, thank
Thank you for sharing this insight with us. How can people connect with you for coaching, for counseling, therapy, all the things?
Sure. So I am on Instagram. I have actually a couple of Instagram pages. My first and my last name, Tynia Coleman. That is a public page, as well as Empower Her Journey Coach on Instagram as well. So those will probably be the best places to find me, just to follow my practice with coaching and counseling. The website for that is Whole Life Coaching and Counseling.com. Whole, WHOLE, life coaching and counseling.com. And so you can always find me there and reach out if you're interested in working together.
Awesome. Thank you so, so, so much for sharing your time with us. And for those of you who have not gotten your registration in for Occupy Mastermind 2025, there is still time. We've got, I think, where are my notes? As of June 27th, 2025, we still have like 10 seats left. Go to the registration site bit.ly/ occupy in all caps 2025, all one word. And we will see you on Saturday, July 19th, here in Baton Rouge at Oak Lodge. Have a great one. Bye bye.